Hey guys. Hello. Hi.
Hey.
I'm Krystal.
I'm Eric.
And we're with the Dog Psychology and Training Center. And we wanted to talk about emotional support animals and child safety with dogs. So I don't know if you guys saw the post we shared earlier. I was reading an article on my own personal feed of a emotional support animal who bit a 4 or 5-year-old little girl in the face. So that's what we're going to be talking about is emotional support animals and training. And we're going to be talking about kids and how to not just teach them to ask to pet a dog, but other steps to take to make sure that they can stay safe with strange dogs out in public. So to recap the story, it basically said that there was a mom with 3 kids, and the mom took one kid with her to go to the fountain or go to the gate to ask, I don't know. The mom left the 13-year-old boy with the 4 or 5-year-old little girl, and there was somebody with an emotional support animal nearby. So the little girl asked if she could pet the dog. The lady said yes, and it was a pit bull, so nothing against pit bulls because every dog's an individual and can make its own right and wrong choices, but it's a pit bull, so it does have a big bite. Bit her in the face. And so pretty severe, blowing up all over social media. And I thought it was a great time to talk about emotional support animals because we get asked about them all the time and to educate about kids. So
yeah.
Before I jump in, you want to add anything?
I'll jump in as you go along.
And keep me on track.
I've got some things that I'd like to say. But.
Yeah. So we often get asked So somebody will say, I have an emotional support animal, but it's not friendly. Can you help me? And I just cringe on the inside because you shouldn't make your dog an emotional support animal if it's not friendly.
We hear the same thing about service dogs all the time.
For people that have trained their own service dog, which means they just bought a service dog vest online and slapped it on their dog and did not really do any training. Then their dog is also aggressive.
Yeah, so we get calls about dogs that have attacked people or have tried to attack people, but these are
lunge and bark.
These are dogs that are labeled as service dogs, so they're wearing, like you said, vests. They're out in public. They're representing service dogs, service dog owners, in a obviously very poor way.
Right. Service dogs are great. We love service dogs. Emotional support animals, the idea, the concept of having an emotional support animal for people that have endured severe trauma is great, or even anxiety. That's great. But the fact that people, I don't know if certify is the word, but basically label their dog a fake service dog or a emotional support animal who is not well trained reflects negatively on all of those people who really need those dogs to get along with life every day.
And so we've done, I think, a couple videos on this, but I'll recap real quick the difference. Service dogs, therapy dogs, and emotional support animals. So service dogs are like you've seen support dogs. They've got diabetic alert dogs. These are dogs that go everywhere with their owner because their owner.
We're still talking about service dogs, right? You said support dog.
Support dog is one function that a service dog could serve. If I said support dog,
did not mean an emotional support animal.
No,
I got confused. I thought I would clarify for everybody else.
Yeah.
So
service dogs essentially go everywhere with their owner. Their owner needs them to function
for whatever purpose that dog does to them. So that dog has a specific job or jobs or tasks that it performs to help this person.
Yeah.
Super important, super needed. We love them.
But obviously, with that, they need to be trained at a level that they can do their task and not be distracted by the world around them anywhere they go.
And just to clarify too, the level of training a service dog needs is intense because that dog has to be able to emotionally cope with life. So when a stranger runs up to the dog like a maniac, the dog can't react aggressively. When they're in a stressful situation, like maybe a fire alarm gets pulled at a business and everybody's running crazy to get out, again, that dog needs to keep its whereabouts to stay calm. Flying on a plane, that's scary for a small child, let alone a dog who you can't communicate in the same language with. So again, to not have a dog trained on an airplane before you take this dog on a public airplane with people, innocent people, is dangerous.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, if you want more information, you can watch our video.
Yes. We'll put a link on there.
But Therapy dogs are, again, they need to be trained to go anywhere and everywhere, but they're for other people's, they're to provide comfort and support to other people, like in nursing homes, small children, hospitals, things like that.
Right.
Emotional support animals don't require any training, unfortunately, to call your dog a emotional support animal. And that title basically grants you the ability to have your emotional support animal in like housing situations that wouldn't normally allow dogs. For example, and on airplanes. That's basically the benefit to having an emotional support animal.
Because the people who truly need an emotional support animal are people who have experienced some severe trauma, so they have some PTSD or some complex PTSD. There is a difference with the two. People that have severe anxiety or social disorders. So an emotional support animal should be prescribed by a psychologist or a therapist because there is an emotional need for this animal, for this person to exist in public or in their home, which is why they're allowed to have it in there. So to take it to the next step, though, as a dog owner, it's your right to make sure whether your dog's an emotional support animal or just a regular dog, to make sure your dog is socially appropriate to take out in public around people. People are unpredictable. Right, without a muzzle. So if you know your dog is reactive, then muzzle condition them. So one, your dog's not afraid of the muzzle. It's comfortable with it. It just thinks it's its new best friend. And two, society stays safe. There's no reason that a dog should bite or maul somebody in public. You, as the owner, are accountable for that. And if your dog suddenly bursts out aggressively, it happens. Next time, don't go out in public without your dog getting muzzled or seeking professional help so that maybe your dog doesn't need a muzzle and we can teach them to behave. One of the things I always say with our dog training families is that it doesn't matter how smart your dog or child is. If they don't have manners, nobody likes them, right? Like we don't like people that are rude or disrespectful or dogs that are rude or disrespectful. We want to like them, but it's hard to when they're being jerks, right? Manners are super, super important. Social etiquette is super important to exist in a public. And so, again, going back to the benefits of having a therapy dog or an emotional support animal or service dogs who need intense training, but even the dogs like therapy dogs who only really work 1 to 2 times a week, maybe more if their family's crazy, but it's a lot of time and commitment for therapy dogs. I love them, but I don't got time for that right now. But those dogs literally, they get their vest on and they know they're working, and then they get that vest taken off and the dog knows they can relax. Service dogs are trained because they never really get that vest taken off. Like when they're out in public, they're on like extreme work, right? Because there's a lot of distractions, but even at home, they're still working because they're still responsible for helping their family or that their particular handler or owner. So they're always working. Emotional support animals, they're always working too, right? People that have traumas, that have anxiety and social insecurities, like that dog's always working. So think about the level of emotional stress that dog is experiencing. I'm not saying stress is bad in this case, but it is still a stress, right? And just like us, even in a relationship, even as a parent, we all need breaks, right? And if we don't get them, we start to go mad. And dogs are the same. So emotional support animals are dogs whose owners, I don't want to offend them. They're dogs whose owners need a lot more emotional help than the average pet dog. So those dogs are tired more quickly. I don't want to say more quickly. How do I want to say this? Because the dog's working kind of on overdrive with being helpful and supportive to their owner, you can imagine the amount of stress that takes on the dog to make them more reactive, just like a parent, right? So this past year for me, I started homeschooling my 2 younger kids. I don't really leave the house much because I work from home. And Eric's usually the one that gets groceries because, they say you never get groceries when you're hungry. I'm always hungry. It doesn't work for me. So I always spend way too much money. So I spend a lot more time at home, and I have found that I need time to myself. More importantly now than ever before, because I'm never away from my kids. I'm here 24/7 almost like every day of the month. I get like 1 day of the month I actually have like a planned date. But because of that, I need to take time for myself in my room. So I'm kind of getting off on tangents here, but emotional support animals, they need training to be able to cope with all of that emotional stress, even though it's a good stress that they are providing for their families, and to be taught how to get that self-help, that self-care that they need. Because I didn't know. I didn't know to go take 5 minutes in my room until it was too late. And I was like snapping at my kids. My eye was twitching. And Eric's like, Chris, I think you should go to your room for a little bit and just relax. And so dogs are the same way. They need to be taught how to do this. So anything to add to that? Or to regroup the conversation?
So I would just say too, like, before we start talking about kids and you know, them getting proper permissions, like, not only is it, in my opinion, your responsibility to make sure that your dog is mentally fit to be in these situations before you put them in those situations, but you need to be able to read your dog and tell by looking at your dog, is your dog comfortable? Is your dog nervous? Is your dog okay with what's going on? Does your dog actually want that 4-year-old child to come up and pet them right now? Or should you say, not right now?
Right.
Like, it's your responsibility. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you have a service dog, emotional support, whatever. If you're going to take your dog out to Lowe's, you should have at least enough knowledge to be able to read your dog and say, and now you can't know with all certainty what your dog's going to do, but there are very, very predictable signs that you can educate yourself to be able to read, at least, is your dog comfortable with what's going on?
Yep.
Or should I remove them from the situation? Should I advocate for them that this is too much pressure for them right now? They need a little break, so on and so forth. To just take your dog out in public and not be able to tell what they're thinking, what they're feeling,
or to not think that your dog has thoughts and feelings. A lot of people just don't even think that. They just think, oh yeah, sure, pet my dog, without actually thinking, would my dog want to be pet right now? So yeah.
And I'll just say this too, because I'm getting a little bit perturbed just thinking about this. Like, we hear all the time, my dog's always great, and just out of nowhere he did this, or all of a sudden he did this. Usually meaning he bit or he tried to attack. That doesn't happen. 99% of the time, that's not the case. Probably 99.5% of the time, that is not the case. Your dog has been telling you things, giving you signs repeatedly, crying out for help, saying, I'm uncomfortable, I don't know what to do about this. And you just have not been listening. Because you haven't.
You don't naturally speak dog.
Right. You're not cued into what is my dog saying. And I would say, without doing an hour-long video on body language, think about whatever we're going to talk a little bit about whatever posture your dog is doing. Imagine if a person was doing that. Think, what would that mean? If I was doing this to Krystal, what would that mean? Right? So, like, in your mind, transplant that body language, that movement, whatever, onto a human, and what would that mean? And
yeah, that's a great analogy. So I mentioned to think about your dog and your dog's feelings when someone asks to pet your dog. A lot of times we just want to please people and we want to make people happy. And so we innocently say yes without thinking about our dog's actual feelings about that situation. So, I'm going to talk about dogs like children, because in this case, there are some similarities that I think need to be stood out. A lot of people say their dogs are their kids and they're their babies. Okay, fine. So treat them like your kids. When you go in public with your child and a stranger comes up and starts talking to them, do you let that stranger hug your kid? Do you let that stranger touch your kid? Probably not, because they're a stranger, right? It's one thing to say, hey, little kid, how are you? But it's another thing to get all creepy and try to hug them or touch them. Get away from my kids, right? The same is true for your dog. If you want to treat your dog like a kid, treat it like a kid, right? There was an article that was shared a few months ago about dogs in the UK and why they are so much better behaved in public than American dogs. And it was because in the UK, they treat their dogs like kids. Like, all dogs are treated like service dogs. If you see a dog in public, it is not your right to go up and pet that dog. That is that person's dog. get your hands off of it. And I say that kind of rude and kind of mean, but I mean, literally, if you want to treat your dog like a kid, then treat your dog like a kid and say, no, don't pet my dog right now.
Yeah, I think there's a time and a place to pet other people's dog. I think there's an appropriate time to do that. But the way that we in this country treat other people's dogs,
right.
we just we literally just run up on them and get in their face.
I love Facebook memes, and there's all those memes of like me when I see a dog. And I mean, inside, that's exactly what I want to do as a human. They feel happy. They give me comfort.
They're fun and cute.
And I just want to squeeze them all over. But also I know that dogs really hate being hugged and being touched by strangers. Very rarely, I mean, literally a minuscule amount of dogs really like to be touched and handled by strangers in public. And there are a few dogs that are just those social butterflies and they love it. But the majority of dogs do not like that. So we're going to get into kids. I have went to several preschools and elementary schools and have talked about dog and kid safety, because for me, being a parent and a dog trainer, I'm very passionate about this. So what is, all right, let's start with this. Just asking to pet someone's dog is not enough, because people want to say yes, even if their dog has a history of nipping or growling, or just because they don't want to say no. A lot of people struggle with actually saying no. So I've had several experiences as a mom and a dog trainer where I've taken my kids to the public kid park and my kids have been playing and somebody brings the dog onto the mulched playground right by the slides and the monkey bars and all of that fun play equipment. And my kids are like, oh, dog, because they were 1 and 2. And that's what a natural 1 or 2-year-old would do when they're like dogs. And so me being the crazy dog trainer I am, practically tackle my kids before they can touch this strange dog because I don't know this dog. And so the lady gives me this offensive, like,
this is no joke.
Seriously. So so my kids know they have to ask, can I pet your dog? And the lady says, sure. So I'm reluctant at this point, but I highly offended this lady by like tackling my kids before they could touch her dog. They go to pet the dog, and then she says something like, well, don't touch her head. She doesn't like it when you touch her head. What? Why would you tell my 1 and 2-year-old babies that it's okay to touch your dog? You can't have limitations on a 1 and 2-year-old. You have to have limitations on yourself and your dog and get off of the playground where kids are going to manhandle and grope your dog. Right. Get out of here.
I'm going to be a lot less offended if you say, don't touch my dog, than when your dog bites my kid after you gave him permission.
Yes. So my mom instinct was to rip my kids away from this dog. However, that would get them bit. So please, as a parent, when a dog does something that you don't like, don't be rash. Don't just rip or whisk your kids away. Calmly take your kid's hand and say, we're done. And I kind of put myself between the kid and the dog. So when I gently pull my kid away, I put myself in between, because a lot of dogs that have aggression or reactivity don't usually bite head on. So here's a kid's head, right? A fist, and then here's the dog head. So as the kid's actually moving away is when a dog will bite. A lot of times. And so if I see a dog being insecure with my kids or has a history of growling or not liking its head being pet, I'm going to put myself between that dog and my child. Because if that dog is going to bite as my kids get pulled away, I want them to bite me and not my kids. And so that was my first experience with strange dogs as a mom with kids at the park. I think that was like my first time at a park actually with my kids because they were so young. But there's been countless other times after that where my kids have seen a dog in public and I have literally had to like tackle my kids away because as a dog trainer, I don't always work with the nicest dogs. So I don't trust dogs unless I know them very well. And so I have gotten a lot of scoffs in public from people that have seen me literally tackle my kids or like aggressively jerk my kids back away from that dog as they start to head towards that dog that's like 10, 15 feet away. No, you're staying here with mom because we don't know that dog. And so we talk about different questions to ask, like, can I pet your dog's a great start, but then there needs to be a follow-up question like, has your dog ever bitten anybody? It sounds so stupid that you'd have to ask that, but you do. Because a lot of people will say, oh, he has nipped a couple times if you get too rough with them.
Hey, well, thanks for the invitation, but I'll pass.
We'll pass. My kids, because they're the kids of dog trainers, will say, has your dog been trained? And so that usually if those people say no, my kids literally will like,
now they
walk
will.
Away. Like your dog's beneath me, has not been professionally trained. But when I go to the preschoolers, I don't ask them to have a whole bunch of follow-up questions for the owners, because I know preschoolers, young kids, aren't going to listen. They're not going to listen to the response. They may not even listen to the question or the answer to the question, can I pet your dog? And they're already reaching for the dog. So we actually talk about body language with those preschoolers to teach them what to look for, like Eric said, with like people. So if you ask to pet someone's dog and you reach for that dog and it pulls away, that dog does not want you to pet them right now. He just means no thanks, maybe later. And so the kids get that. They're like, oh, okay. Or we talk about like how, if you're petting a dog, let's see, I'll have the dog face the hand, okay? I need to get like a dog like Muppet, or like we have a dog toy. Our kids have tons of dog toys. We just need to steal one. So here's the dog and here's the kid hand. So if the kid starts petting the dog, preferably not right on his eyeball like this, but if they start petting the dog and the dog clenches its mouth really tightly closed, we teach the kids to pull their hands away and to calmly walk away. And we role play with them, because toddlers, preschooler aged kids, they don't do well with listening. They have to role play. You have to act it out with them. And so I sometimes will have my Neapolitan Mastiff with me, who I know is great with kids. I know that kids can accidentally step on her and she will be okay with this. I know that kids can poke her in the eyeball and that she would be okay with this. And do I hope that kids don't do this? Yes. Do I try to prevent kids from doing this? Yes. But kids are kids and they do weird things. But I know that she has been tested again and again and has passed with flying colors being in the presence of young children. So sometimes we role play with Morgan. Sometimes we just role play with the kids, like, okay, pretend like I'm a dog and come up and pet me. And so the kids will come up and pet my head or my shoulder. And so I'll get a grimace on my face and be like, we make it fun, because kids need to learn through play, right? And if it's not fun, then they're not going to want to participate. And so they'll stop petting me. And, it's really important, because sometimes they just run away and giggle. Well, that's not acceptable. If I was a dog, I could bite you. So let's do it again. Come back. And they start petting me and I start to grimace and tighten my lips and maybe do tight lip licking. And so they have to calmly put their hands at their side and walk away. And so we role play this over and over again in different scenarios. They start petting me and I look away. That's the dog saying, I'd rather be somewhere else right now, which means I don't want you to pet me anymore. And so we talk about how the dog is saying, I'm done. I don't want you to pet me anymore, and how it's very important to calmly pull your hand away and walk away. And we literally role play every situation that a dog might do that shows uncomfortable body language signals. And we can't do every, but the most common ones. Another one, like Eric said, is turning completely away. Another one would be if you're petting the dog and the dog pulls away, don't keep reaching for the dog. Yeah. Just put your hand down by your side and walk away. And so, or say thank you and then walk away. But it's really important with those younger age children to role play this, because maybe that 4 or 5-year-old that was told she was allowed to pet this dog, if this dog was doing those tight-lipped licking, maybe the dog was doing what's called whale eye. So like if you're petting the dog and he's looking away and you see a lot of the whites of the dog's eyes, that's another sign that the dog's uncomfortable and he doesn't like this and he's telling you to stop. And if you don't listen, he's going to escalate to the next body language signal, which could be the tight lip licking. And then he's going to escalate to the next one, which might be like the ears glued back to the head and the eyes are bulging out and he's doing the tight lip licking. And then maybe he's turning his head, but that was enough. So then he's pulling away and the kid's still petting him. And so the dog felt like he had no choice but to bite. Also understanding that this dog probably hadn't had any professional dog training and was in a very stressful situation at an airport, getting ready to load up on a plane. And who knows, he maybe just transferred from another plane that already made him already on edge and uncomfortable. And he was terrified and shaking and nervous the whole time. It's just a heightened stress level. And so you talked about this the other night. What was it called? Like the layered stress model? The layered
stress model. Mm-hmm. So the thought process here is just basically, people and dogs, we have different layers of stress. So you need to take this stuff into consideration. And so like we're talking about this pit bull that was at the airport, like he maybe has never acted like this before, right? He maybe has never been on an airplane before.
Maybe he's liked kids prior to this. Maybe he still likes kids.
And like I said, if his owner was trained to read, he or she, I don't know if it was male or female.
I think it was a female. But
if he was trained to read his dog and communicate appropriately with his dog, he could have avoided this altogether, even if his dog was extremely uncomfortable. But the layered stress model is basically, different layers of stress could be like dietary stress. Like if if myself or my dog has like a upset stomach, or I've got diarrhea, like that's just a layer of stress that even if everything else in my day is going totally fine, I'm going to be a little like, I'm a little off, right? Yeah. Physical stress. So if I've got like a kink in my neck, or I just had a shoulder injury, like that's just another thing that like, maybe I just bumped my shoulder that I hurt.
Or maybe your muscles are tense from shaking on the plane because you were so scared.
Right, yeah, putting in dog's terms. So that's just another layer of stress. Maybe I'm a dog and my owner just got off a really stressful phone call. Just found out that my mom got cancer, or my daughter was in a car accident. Like, dogs are emotional sponges. So that is a whole layer of stress right there. Like, if your owner just got off a really stressful call, like you just got off a really stressful call, maybe twice as bad, right? Environmental stress. So if you're at an airport for the first time or the second or third time, like even if you've been to an airport 3 or 4 times, like that is an immensely stressful situation.
Those first couple of times are the worst.
Holy
so imagine it from a dog's
man.
perspective when they don't understand anything.
Right. Think about how stressful it was the first time you went to an airport. Magnify that times 10. Okay. So there are all these different layers of stress, and I could keep going on and on and on, but like you've got to think about this kind of stuff with your dog. So again, this dog may have been in any other situation totally fine with this, but he's, each layer of stress just brings you closer to your threshold. And say this is your threshold, okay? And this is your baseline, and you've got all these layers of stress, and this is your fuse, okay? Between where you're at now and your threshold. So the more layers of stress you've got going on, the shorter your fuse. So whereas this might have brought you a little bit closer to your threshold yesterday, today you were already close enough that that's it. So you snap. I've been there. I know you've been there. Your dog's been there. So these are things that we need to take into consideration. Just because your dog was fine yesterday with this same situation, almost same situation, today could be totally different, especially when there's something super obvious like you're at an airport. So
yeah, so we don't mean to keep smearing the story through the news feed, because I know that's what happens, but I only do this because I want to help owners with emotional support animals understand their responsibilities in having an animal that they bring out into public, and I also want to help parents be better equipped to talk to their kids about dog interactions in public and what's acceptable, because ultimately as a parent, all we really want is for our kids to stay safe. And so, yeah, I hope this was helpful. If you know somebody who has young children, please share this so that they can see it and learn some of the role-playing games that they can do with their kids to make sure their kids understand dog communication and can be better aware of when to stop petting or when to not pet at all, to hopefully avoid another kid getting bit by a dog.
Right. Yeah, we don't like doing these kind of videos. I get a little bit heated when we talk about this stuff because we get
We're Mama Bear and Papa Bear when it comes to kids, okay? We love kids.
And we get all the behind-the-scenes, terrible, horrific stories that most people don't hear. So we hear it all the time. Yep. The dogs that have always been fine, things happen out of nowhere.
And we feel bad for the dogs. Like,
right. I feel bad for everybody involved.
I'm mad at the dog, but at the same time, my heart aches for that dog because it really... He's the IQ of a toddler. So ultimately it was his owner's responsibility. And I feel bad for the owner because they're probably in a crap storm right now.
Yeah.
Thinking that their dog was always fine. So this would be great. But there's a responsibility to know there's a difference between your dog being fine in your home or even around your close ring of friends and your dog being fine in a public area that's highly stressful. Okay, sorry.
So, yeah. I apologize if anything I said offends anyone or
Agreed.
if something that I described was your scenario. This video is not to offend anyone or say that anyone's done anything wrong. The reason that we felt compelled to do this video is because we see these all the time, right? We're in dog trainer groups. We're in different groups where people tag us on stuff and share stuff.
We get called by owners who's had a dog act this way and has bitten somebody or some child, and they have severe regrets and they want to fix it and they want to move forward. And so we do help them overcome it, but it's heartbreaking because it could have been avoided. Yeah.
So this video is to educate people and educate dog owners, educate kid owners, parents,
yes,
and so that you can try to educate your kids a little bit more to prevent this kind of stuff. Because so many times we talk about the dog's threshold and where they were, like we can avoid getting any closer to their threshold if we are a little bit more educated. So, and I'll say this, I'm going to do a little plug for Krystal. I'm going to overcommit her maybe right now.
Oh, no.
If you are in the Greenville area and you have any affiliation with this school and you would like her to come speak to kids, I'm sure she would be just.
I can speak to adults too, but
right, on reading canine body language and how to respond, the good, the bad, the pros, the cons, all that stuff. Reach out to us. Shoot us an email or a Facebook.
And if you have follow-up questions to this, like if there's something we didn't clarify or something that you're like, whoa, what did you just say that? Please let us know in the comments, because like Eric said, this wasn't meant to offend, but to educate.
All right, we better get off here.
All right, bye guys. Thanks for tuning in.
You have to hit